Welcome to a midweek edition of Boxing During Dinner. Armando Alvarez here with Victor Bermudez. David Barry, we gave him the night off. The guy was beat.
He's got to get ready for what's coming, man.
Yeah,
We're
man.
already used to
So
it. We're used to it.
exactly. His for those of you catching up, his wife is expecting in the next few weeks. So she's gonna give birth, and David's gonna become a dad, and it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Victor's been there 3 times. I've been there once, and I'm trying to get him prepared, but he needed the night off. I told him get some rest. Get your dinner without us. Don't think about boxing right now. Just be there for Jesse. But yeah, Victor. So the last episode we had Claudia Trejos on. We touched on a couple of topics with the craziness in the heavyweight division, and then we talked about the 140-pound division with Josh Taylor beating Jose Ramirez. Right underneath that is probably one of the most exciting divisions in all of boxing, which is the lightweight division. And we have a fight coming up June 19th here in Miami, Florida. We're going to have a lot of coverage leading up to that card here on Boxing During Dinner. Teofimo Lopez and George Cambosos Jr. But this weekend, Victor, we have Devin Haney, the WBC champ. For better or worse, he has the belt, WBC belt, and he's fighting Jorge Linares, who was one of my favorites, man. Like, I remember seeing Jorge Linares. The first time I saw Jorge Linares, I'm like, this is one of the prettiest boxers I've seen in a bit. Like the way he fights. No, but and I don't mean it like in a physical.
I thought you meant it look wise.
No. I mean like in the
he's
ring.
He's a good fucking dude. That's why I was like, yeah.
In the ring, he fights pretty. Like I see it and I'm like, no, that's some pretty boxing. Like in and out, quick hands. He's a really good fighter. You know, he's been
first guy to drop Lomachenko, man. First and only dude to drop Lomachenko. So that's an impressive feat on its own.
Yeah, and he's been tagged in the past. He's been knocked out in the past.
Sergio
Thompson knocked him out. But this seems to be, at least in a lot of eyes, this is the biggest test of Devin Haney's career. Like you said, Linares is a guy who's been there for a bit. He was the first guy to knock down Lomachenko. Gave him hell until the knockout. And Devin Haney, he's building himself up. He's looked impressive. He's a very good boxer, but he hasn't taken on someone with the pedigree of a Jorge Linares. How do you see Saturday night playing out?
Just because of the age and where Linares is in this stage in his career, I'm going with Devin Haney. I think Devin Haney gets past him, but I'm not at all impressed by Devin Haney. Look, he's a good boxer, as you mentioned. He does a lot of things well, but he's in a loaded division. That whole 130, if you have me choose what's the weakest link at that 135 division, I'm saying Devin Haney. I think if he fights Ryan Garcia right now, Ryan Garcia drops him. Let's not even talk about the Teofimo Lopez of the world. I'm not, and I know what Devin Haney did to Ryan Garcia in the amateurs. I get all that, but it's a different type of Ryan Garcia now in the pros. Again, I just don't think, I think out of everyone in that division, he's probably the weakest link. But with that said, he's catching Jorge Linares at a stage in his career where George is pretty much, he's closer to the finish line than he is to his prime. So I like Devin Haney to get past him, but I think I don't want to say Devin Haney's ceiling. I'm not going to be that crazy either, because that's unfair to the kid. But if you pick someone in that division, I think he's at the bottom of the totem pole, in my opinion.
Look, there's a lot of good fighters at 135. Devin Haney, I agree with you. I think he's going to beat Jorge Linares. He'll probably win by unanimous decision. I think out of the bunch, he's probably one of the better techniques. He's not going to be the most exciting fighter in the division, but he could beat you over 12 rounds for the most part, unless you're Toño Moran, one of the best knockouts I've seen in the last few years. But Devin Haney,
that did a lot for him. The way he grabbed that knockout and knockout of the year and opened a lot of eyes. So it's like the coming out party for Devin Haney. But then you get the Devin Haney that just goes back to winning by decision, and it's Antonio Moran, someone you're extremely familiar with. I'm extremely familiar with. So, being a Boxeo Telemundo main eventer, it's Antonio Moran. That's where, who had heard of Antonio Moran, unless you were on Boxeo Telemundo prior to Devin Haney, and who's heard of him since?
you and me, but
I
but
mean, we're so
Devin
harsh,
Haney,
man.
I mean, I think he's a good fighter, and I think he's up
He
there
is.
with everybody in the division, right? Because to me, it's a wide open division. There's a lot of good talent, and on the past podcast that you and I had, I remember going on and on about the lightweight division.
Yeah.
One guy that I consider, and I may think, I mean, I may put him as the very best is Shakur Stevenson, and he's at 130. Just because of his boxing skills, I think he's going to give any of these guys fits if he goes to 135. Devin Haney is another guy that could give anybody fits the way he fights. I do see what you're saying. You know, Lopez had the trademark win versus Lomachenko. Ryan Garcia had his trademark win getting off the canvas against Luke Campbell. This would be Haney's win. This would be the one that would put him on the map, I think, because Jorge Linares, former champ, good boxer, he's a big name, gave Lomachenko hell. You know, he meets all the criteria.
Yeah.
So I think he's a cut above who Devin Haney's fought. So let's see how impressive he looks on Saturday. But all eyes are going to be on him because, like I said, a few weeks from now we have Teofimo Lopez. Then we have Lomachenko. Then Shakur Stevenson's going to come back. So we have all these guys back to back. We have Tank Davis going up to 140. So
Yeah.
we're going to get to see all these guys, Victor, almost back to back. So we're going to be there with our pens and papers like a teacher in school, and we're going to be giving these people grades. So let's see. I mean, I'm excited because this kicks off like a few weeks of 135 to 140 pounders, I guess, if you want to if you want to call Davis a 140 pounder, and we're going to grade them all because we got to know who's the best of the bunch.
I just think out of everyone that you've mentioned, you obviously, Delfimo Lopez and his win over Lomachenko. You mentioned how Ryan Garcia proved all the doubters and got up off the canvas to score a knockout. I think if we do start doing that, comparing resumes, again, Devin Haney is at the back of the line, and even a win against Linares to me isn't as impressive as Ryan Garcia getting up or as Delfimo Lopez dethroning the pound for pound king at the moment. And then I'm not even going to bring up. Look, I think Shakur beats him. I've been a huge fan of Shakur Stevenson ever since the Olympic gold medal match where he settled for silver against Ortiz Ramirez in
I,
2016.
I remember being high on him in the World Series of Boxing when that's when
Mayweather was as well. Mayweather, it was all expected for him to sign with Mayweather Promotions coming out of those Olympics. We're huge on Shakur Stevenson. Been so. That's another one.
I remember producing a World Series of Boxing for Univision,
Yeah.
and our good friend Brad Jacobs came to the truck. He said hello. We're there talking. You know, we saw who the people that were gonna fight. We saw the roster, and he had to leave. He's like, "Hey, Armando, something came up." He texted me. I had to run out. Text me. If you see anybody that catches your eye. As soon as Shakur Stevenson fought, I'm like, tell Bob Arum to sign Shakur Stevenson.
Yeah. Yeah.
This guy is very impressive. I mean,
he was the talk of the Olympics, man.
there was no doubt. It's hard once you fight a Robesi Ramirez who, had won, multiple gold medals and had that pedigree. But Shakur, I agree with you, man. I'm very high. I think I picked Shakur Stevenson against a lot of these guys, but we're gonna see what Devin Haney could do, and
yeah,
and he has a good shot because, Gervonta now. You start talking about him at 140 if he beats Barrios. So let's see what happens because Devin Haney with an impressive win could become the talk for a couple of weeks until Lopez fights, and then we'll see from there and on and on and on. But going back to the 135-pound division years ago, and I remember watching this fight at Telemundo when I was working there. I remember Manny Pacquiao fighting David Diaz, and that was one of the sickest knockouts that he's ever had. That and the Ricky Hatton fight. But David Diaz face planted.
The Ricky Hatton fight, I was an intern for you, and we watched that together at NBC6 and local Telemundo. I'll never forget that.
Those knockouts were historic. I mean, they were sick.
Yeah.
David Diaz, it was hard for me to. I started thinking, and I saw somebody tweet this the other day, and I was like, dude, you're absolutely right. David Diaz is the last southpaw that Manny Pacquiao fought.
Wow.
And that was a while ago.
Wow.
He looked really good against that southpaw. now he fights another southpaw in Errol Spence. That fight gets signed. We wake up, we see Manny Pacquiao just Instagram post, Pacquiao Spence, and we're like, holy crap.
Very
Because
Pacquiao like.
because for years, we're talking about Pacquiao Crawford possibly happening. And all of a sudden, Pacquiao's fighting Errol Spence. It's a big fight. Whether Errol Spence walks through an older Manny Pacquiao or not, it's a big fight. And it's a big fight for Errol Spence because Errol Spence, even if this Victor, even if it doesn't end up being the toughest fight of his career, because we saw Errol Spence going through fits against Sean Porter, it would be the biggest fight on that level, right? On a
Yeah,
mega fight level in Errol Spence's career, because Manny Pacquiao's been in there at that mega level against everybody,
practically half his career, you would say.
and
Uh,
including this one.
yeah, including that one. Dude, Manny Pacquiao is. I'm, and it's crazy that I've even started to think this because I'm a big Mayweather fan inside the ring. Huge admiration for what he's been able to accomplish. But if Manny Pacquiao at this age is able to go up against Errol Spence, who many have him top 5 pound for pound list, and he's able to dethrone Errol Spence just after dethroning Keith Thurman, I'm not just willing to look. That's a first ballot Hall of Famer as it is, and I know the man on your shirt beat Manny Pacquiao. But I'd be open to hearing a debate or discussion as to Manny Pacquiao is better than Floyd Mayweather, and not necessarily better as a fighter, just better career, better resume. Despite having lost to Floyd Mayweather, I think a win over Errol Spence Jr. puts Manny Pacquiao at a different, just a bit higher pedestal than Floyd Mayweather because of all the accomplishments that go into that historic career. And you got to give him a legit shot.
Look, if the senator comes in at 40 some years old and pulls a Tom Brady, comes out and wins,
no YouTuber,
wins his Super Bowl against Errol Spence, what an accomplishment. I mean, he's gonna go in there and I think he's gonna give Errol Spence some trouble because Pacquiao still has that little Manny Pacquiao, bounce, and he's gonna come in and catch you. He may catch you with one of those punches, kind of like he did with Thurman. He's sneaky. I mean, he drops you with these shots. I think eventually Errol Spence gets to him and probably stops him in the later rounds. I think he's too young, too strong. He's at his peak right now. But Manny Pacquiao, man, I remember being in Vegas for a bunch of his fights and walking and seeing the Filipino crowd, the way that they were reacting, the bets they were making at the sports book, going to Foot Locker and seeing the Manny Pacquiao shirts, the shoes, the Freddie Roach nose shirts by Nike. And I'm like, man, this guy is bigger than the sport. Yeah. And I don't know many guys or many boxers except Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Sugar Ray Leonard, those guys that transcended boxing, and Manny Pacquiao was at that level.
I think I was gonna say it's totally fair to put him in that.
I think he still is. I don't know if you remember in the pardon the interruption with Kornheiser and Wilbon. They had this little Manny Pacquiao figure in the background that he's posing and I remember seeing that. I'm like, dude, that's really cool. They made a little set. It was Manny Pacquiao against Mickey Mouse, believe it or not. And dude, look it up on eBay. See how much that costs. I'm not buying it. I don't care how much money I have. I'm not buying that. It's way too expensive. But it's really cool. What other boxer could sell a little caricature of him, for different $500, $1,000, So Manny Pacquiao fighting Errol Spence, dude, that's amazing. It's amazing to me. It's amazing in the sport of boxing that what he's doing. And the fact that some people, I think some people are giving him a shot. That's up in the
I think he deserves it. I'm not picking him to win, but look, just based off what he did to Keith Thurman and accepting the fact that this is Errol Spence post car accident. There's a lot to be said. Was he impressive? Somewhat. So, it's now you're getting in the ring with a proven Hall of Famer and one who, for whatever belt you want to, if you want to discredit the interim, the regular, the super, I get all that. But regardless, he took the belt from a Keith Thurman and someone who at one point in the recent years was highly thought of in that welterweight division. And here comes the old man, the senator, as you said, and takes out Keith Thurman, who at one time, no pun intended, was the one looking down at the rest of the welterweights and the Errol Spences and the Danny Garcias and the Porters. And here comes Manny Pacquiao and does what none of those guys, and granted, Keith didn't give them all the opportunity, but what some couldn't do. So he earns that sort of leeway of saying, if he does it, would you be surprised if Manny Pacquiao wins? Like, would you just be like, I can't believe it? A huge underdog.
To me, it'll be like a Tom Brady, a Tom Brady. Like it gets to the point that Tom Brady.
It's Derek Jeter. I can't stand Derek. Now he's the Marlins owner, so I like him. And shout out to your hat.
That's the Marlins Sugar King Nike Connect hat. It's brilliant. Unlike you, I've always loved Derek Jeter because I'm a big
because you're a Yankee fan. But I have to acknowledge that Derek Jeter, at the biggest moments of his career, just like Tom Brady, as you've been mentioning, got the job done. Whether it was the 300th,
But Victor, to your point. I mean, and I know you're going like through the big moments, but think of Brady last year, right? Wins the Super Bowl at 44, 45, right? Or 43. You got Derek Jeter, his last game walk-off hit. Kobe Bryant's last game in the NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, these are it's amazing to see, but like you said, it wouldn't. If Manny Pacquiao comes and beats Errol Spence, it'll be like, wow, he did it. But you wouldn't be like, oh my God, oh man, I can't believe. No, you could.
It's not Andy Ruiz beating Joshua.
No.
You're not going to be shocked. It's going to be like, there goes Manny Pacquiao. Why count him out?
I mean, you could be like, oh wow, I didn't expect them to win, but you get it. And I
was more
totally
shocked.
with you.
I was more shocked to see Juan Manuel Marquez lay Manny Pacquiao face flat on the canvas than I would be to see Manny Pacquiao beat Errol Spence.
Wow. Yeah, no, that says a lot, and I don't disagree with you, man. And before we go, because this is a short midweek version of Boxing During Dinner, if you're Terrence Crawford, you got to be upset, man. Because
dude, I've been critical. I know you've had him at pound for pound for a while, 1A, 1B with Lomachenko for a long time. Dude, what have I been telling you? Everybody likes to talk crap about promotions and Bob Arum. Man. There's a reason why you're not making these fights. There's a reason why guys aren't fighting you. At some point, he needs to look at himself in the mirror and be like, maybe I'm the problem. And look, I know they're disgruntled there with Top Rank and Terrence Crawford. Mike Coppinger was on our first podcast back saying they're expected to part ways come October. I get all that. But at some point, Terrence Crawford needs to look at himself in the mirror and be like, maybe I'm not getting these big money fights because of myself. Again, how many times have I said it? Man, if you can't sell Omaha, Nebraska, there's a problem here.
I'm a huge Terrence Crawford fan. I think he's probably the most skilled boxer in boxing today. But it sucks because I think he beats Spence. I think he beats everybody right now. But he needs to get
I'm not so sure about that. He
needs to get these fights, and he better hope if he stays with Top Rank that he gets a Josh Taylor fight, because that would be a big fight. But then again, I don't know.
At 147?
At 147. I don't know if he'll go to England. I don't know if he'll be willing to go to England. So if not him, who? Keith Thurman? Sean Porter? I mean, the Sean Porter fight, the negotiations went nowhere. So then where does that leave Terrence Crawford? Because to me, it angers me, bro. It angers me because I love seeing Terrence Crawford fight. I flew to New York December 2019 with David to see Terrence Crawford fight because I'm like, I have to go see him in person because I think he's a beast. I think when you touch him and when you check his chin, he comes at you like 1,000 like 1,000 times stronger than you.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's into the game.
He's a killer, but fights need to
At
happen.
this point, and
Fights need to happen.
I understand the technique, the appreciation for who he is as a boxer. I get all that. I know that. I know how good he is. I see it. But we go back to the beginning of the conversation. Right now, you take every welterweight there is. I'm not going to throw in Taylor because I was going to throw in some of the 140 pounders as well. But you take every welterweight there is. And Terrence Crawford's resume is at the bottom of my list. Let that marinate. So you think Keith Thurman, and you think everybody Keith Thurman has faced, Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Manny, let's not even mention Manny Pacquiao. That's the best resume in the sport as it is. And you stack all those, even Errol Spence Jr., you stack even his resume up against Terrence Crawford. And Terrence Crawford's biggest win is Yurioki Gamboa at a weight that Gamboa should not have been fighting in. Granted, he's probably the most elite fighter out of the bunch, but if we're talking resumes and going down the list, box rec, I'm the least impressed with Terrence Crawford.
Yeah, man.
And
and I don't know if it was a case that these other fighters just didn't want to take on him because they, again,
and that might be the case.
And maybe they didn't feel like they had to. They're like, look, I'm with PBC. I can make big fights with Garcia, Thurman, Spence. You know, like you could do a little round robin there, and you don't have to go outside the promotion to fight Terrence Crawford when he might beat you. But to me, as a Terrence Crawford fan, it's disappointing, and I hold that guy in such high regard. So, look, hopefully,
as a boxing fan,
hopefully Top Rank gets him against a big name. If he leaves, hopefully he starts fighting these bigger names. I would love to see him fight Errol Spence. I mean, that's a fight I think every true boxing fan wants to see. But let's see. We may never get to it.
Unfortunately, I don't think that fight gets made and I think Terrence Crawford's smart enough to say, my contract is up in October. Why am I going to negotiate with Errol Spence when I can do that under the Al Heyman umbrella of PBC and probably for more money? I've been told Al Heyman pays extremely well. So if that fight is going to happen, I don't think if it happens under Top Rank. I would like to see a Josh Taylor fight before the year end, and obviously that would be under Top Rank. But who's to, look, man, it's Terrence Crawford. He's unpredictable. Who's to say that he doesn't sit out the rest of the contract?
Yep, we saw Andre Ward, who's one of the best to ever do it, do that. So we got to wrap up Boxing During Dinner, but David will be back on next week when we tape. Hopefully he gets much needed rest. And Victor, just tell everybody we're working on a really good guest list, like a really good guest list. So I'm
man, it's when you part with certain people who share the same enthusiasm, and on top of that, have a respect about them in this business, in this small world of covering boxing. You mentioned a couple names of who you're partnering with, and people are more than willing to come on. We've already had Mike Coppinger on, best insider in the sport that there is, Claudia Trejos, a groundbreaker in this sport when it comes to women, and not just that. I mean, the stuff she does on the announce table for DAZN, and working on a few friends that we have along the way. I know Abner Mars, spoken to him. He's on the call for the Floyd Mayweather Logan Paul fight. He'll be here in Miami, so we should be linking up with him next week. The idea is to have Abner Mars, 4-time world champion, join Boxing During Dinner next week and help us break down that Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather exhibition.
It's, dude, I always say it, and I'm always playing around, but Apollo and Drago was an exhibition. It was an exhibition.
What a great reference, man.
It's an exhibition.
In the dance out.
Man. And going back to Rocky before we go, Drago's manager, whatever he was, that Drago picked him up and threw him. He goes back and sits with Gorbachev. Do you think he got executed after Drago lost to Rocky?
For sure, bro.
For sure, bro.
For sure, bro. They don't tolerate that in the Soviet.
Hate to see it happen, dude, but hey, Drago got shunned. We found that out in Creed 2.
Right.
But anyway, this has been Boxing During Dinner, and we'll be back next week.